Keith Urban is not just a musician, he is a force of nature, a virtuoso whose guitar strings sing with both elegance and fire. He is the thunderstorm that swept through country music and rewrote its rhythm with heart, soul, and staggering brilliance. A man who turned raw emotion into melody, who made stadiums weep and rejoice in equal measure. From the rolling hills of New Zealand to the grand stages of Nashville, Keith Urban rose not as a trend, not as a passing star, but as a legend carved into the very soul of American music. His voice carried across continents, his talent undeniable, his charm effortless. With Grammy Awards in hand and a career that redefined the boundaries of country music, he lived the kind of life most only dream about. Glittering stages, a love story with Hollywood icon Nicole Kidman, an empire of sound and success. At the peak of his fame, he was untouchable, unstoppable, radiant. But today, Keith Urban is nearing 60, and his life is far from the glamorous image many still believe. The world sees only the spotlight and the fame. But behind the curtain lies a life marked by chaos, hardship, profound loss, and wounds that never fully healed. In this video, we will uncover the tragedies he has quietly carried for decades, haunting moments that may leave you truly shaken. If you have ever known or admired Keith Urban, don't forget to hit like. Your small gesture is a tribute to an extraordinary talent who deserves to be honored. Before the world knew his name, before the awards and acclaim, there was only a boy, small, sensitive, and surrounded by storms. Keith Lionel Urban was born on October 26, 1967, in the town of Whangarei, New Zealand. His earliest memories were not of applause but of movement, constant uprooting, shifting grounds, and a search for belonging. When he was just 2 years old, the Urban family relocated to Caboolture, Queensland, Australia. It was supposed to be a fresh start, but tragedy would arrive too soon. At the age of 9, Keith watched helplessly as his family's home was engulfed in flames. Everything was reduced to ashes: photos, toys, clothes, dreams. The fire left them with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the quiet mercy of strangers. All we had left, he would later recall, was each other and the kindness of neighbors who showed up with boxes of clothes. But the fire outside was only a flicker compared to the inferno within. Behind the walls of their modest home, another kind of destruction took place. One without smoke, but with scars just as deep. His father, Robert Bob Urban, was a man of two extremes, a passionate country music lover and an unpredictable alcoholic. The very man who introduced Keith to the guitar also introduced him to fear. The air at home was thick with volatility. Keith once admitted, "I don't remember him ever telling me he loved me." Phew, those words weren't just sad, they were devastating. A child aching for affection found only silence, anger, and fists. But even in the shadows, there were flickers of hope. One day, Bob placed a sign in the window of his convenience store seeking a guitar teacher for his son. It was a rare, fragile gesture of love, and it changed everything. That sign led Keith to Sue McCarthy, the woman who would become his first mentor. At 4, Keith strummed a ukulele. By 6, he gripped a guitar like it was armor. Music, from the beginning, wasn't an interest. It was a shield. It was a lifeline. In a house ruled by mood swings and silence, the guitar gave him a voice. It spoke what he couldn't say, soothed what couldn't be comforted. He found escape in music festivals, especially Tamworth, and by performing with local talents like Jenny Wilson. He began winning awards, including the coveted Golden Guitar. To the world, he was a prodigy. But behind every ovation was a boy still trying to breathe. During his teenage years, Keith played in smoky pubs and bars, his parents chauffeuring him from one gig to the next. There, on stages too big for his broken heart, he tried to make sense of the chaos. The applause felt good, but it never silenced the emptiness. "Music saved me," he later said. "It gave me somewhere to go when home didn't feel like home." That sentence, quiet and raw, says it all. His childhood wasn't just difficult, it was devastating. It was lonely. It was unfair. But it was also the crucible that forged his soul. Those early years, the fire, the fists, the forgotten hugs, didn't break Keith Urban. They built him. They turned pain into poetry, wounds into rhythm, and silence into sound. And this is where the story truly begins. Not on a glamorous stage, not beside a Hollywood star, but in the smoldering ruins of a boyhood he was never allowed to fully live. Keith Urban's journey from child prodigy to global country icon was neither instant nor easy. It was a long, grinding road paved with rejection, resilience, and raw faith. After clawing his way through a childhood scarred by fire and fear, Keith's earliest performances were anything but glamorous. At 8 years old, he was already playing in dingy pubs and dusty fairgrounds across Queensland, Australia, his tiny hands gripping a guitar bigger than his frame. His parents, still reeling from the loss of their home and trapped in their own emotional battles, became his de facto tour managers, driving him from gig to gig, hoping that maybe, just maybe, music would save them all. It wasn't stage lights he chased then, it was survival. By age 15, his talent was unmistakable. He had the fingers of a virtuoso and the soul of someone who had lived through lifetimes. But despite early TV appearances on shows like New Faces in 1983 and performances with singer Jenny Wilson that earned them the prestigious Golden Guitar Award at Tamworth, Keith's fame was confined to small-town stages and local admiration. His biggest stages were still far out of reach. Deeply inspired by rock legends like Mark Knopfler and Lindsey Buckingham, Keith began to blend country twang with electric fire, a sound uniquely his, yet hard to classify. This uniqueness, while artistically powerful, made him difficult to market. Still, he persisted. In 1990, he released his debut album in Australia under EMI, but it was barely a blip outside of local circles. For most, it would have been enough, but Keith Urban wasn't most people. In 1992, he made a terrifying leap, leaving behind his home, his safety net, and any semblance of security to chase his dream in Nashville, Tennessee. The move was less a relocation and more an act of spiritual defiance. "I knew no one. I had no plan B," he would later say. Nashville welcomed him with indifference. Doors didn't just close, they slammed. He played background guitar for other acts, wrote songs that others would sing, and swallowed his pride more times than he could count. His band, The Ranch, formed in the mid-1990s, showed promise but fizzled commercially. Nights were long, rejection was constant, and the shadows of his childhood traumas still lingered. "I remember thinking, maybe I'm not meant to do this," he once confessed. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Music was no longer a dream. It was his oxygen. Every empty bar he played, every song he wrote for someone else, every call that never came, it all hardened his resolve. He wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing freedom. It wasn't until 1999, 7 years after arriving in Nashville, that he finally released his self-titled American debut album. And when the single "But for the Grace of God" hit #1, the boy from Queensland who played through trauma finally tasted the triumph he he had bled for. But it wasn't just a victory, it was a resurrection. And it marked the beginning of a meteoric rise born not from luck, but from the furnace of suffering and an unshakable will to keep going when everything told him to stop. Fame didn't come gently. It roared into Keith Urban's life like a long-delayed promise finally kept. After years of grinding through anonymity and heartbreak in Nashville, the turn of the millennium marked a stunning pivot. In 1999, Keith released his first American solo album, and with the hauntingly honest hit, "But for the Grace of God," he finally claimed his place on the U.S. country charts. It wasn't a fluke, it was a reckoning. The song's ascent to #1 signaled the arrival of a new kind of country star, one who fused grit with vulnerability, traditional twang with searing guitar solos. And from there, he didn't just rise, he exploded. In 2002, his track "Somebody Like You" dominated the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart and was later declared the biggest country hit of the decade by Billboard itself. The world had finally caught up to the sound he had carried with him for years, forged in pain, doubt, and relentless drive. But success didn't erase the scars. It spotlighted them. Keith found himself battling the paradox of fame, adored by millions, yet often feeling more alone than ever. Behind the scenes, he struggled with imposter syndrome and the remnants of a past that never stopped whispering that he wasn't enough. Yet, he pushed forward album after album. 2004's "Be Here" was a juggernaut, producing multiple chart toppers like "Days Go By" and "Making Memories of Us." By now, Keith wasn't just a country artist, he was reshaping the very landscape of the genre. His blend of country, rock, and pop elements pulled in a diverse audience, earning him critical acclaim and commercial clout. Tours sold out, albums went triple platinum. But what the audience didn't see were the nights he questioned his worth, the days when old habits loomed dangerously close, and the endless pressure to keep topping himself. Awards began to pile up. 4 Grammy Awards, 15 Academy of Country Music Awards, 13 CMA Awards. Each one was a testament to his talent, but also a symbol of the weight he carried. During this period, Keith also joined the panel of American Idol as a judge from seasons 12 to 15. It was a move that introduced him to an even wider audience, showcasing not only his musical expertise, but also his warmth, wit, and deep empathy for aspiring artists. Despite the global fame, Keith remained strikingly human. He spoke openly in later interviews about the surreal nature of success, how one can be surrounded by lights, cameras, and cheering fans, yet still feel like that lost kid from Caboolture trying to prove his worth. By the mid-2000s, Keith's success was no longer just artistic, it was financial. His albums sold millions worldwide. His tours grossed tens of millions of dollars, and he had become one of the highest-paid performers in country music. Television deals, endorsements, and a best-selling line of signature guitars added to his fortune, eventually pushing his net worth to an estimated $75 million. Through it all, he held on to the thing that had never failed him: music. It remained his anchor, his lifeline, and his way out. Every chord he played, every lyric he wrote echoed with the ghosts of where he came from and the fire that kept him going. Keith Urban's rise to stardom was not a smooth crescendo. It was a series of hard-won peaks, clawed out of the valleys of rejection and doubt. His success story wasn't about reaching the top. It was about surviving everything it took to get there. And just when it seemed like the darkness would consume him entirely, a light appeared. Not blinding, not loud, but steady, gentle and transformative. That light was Nicole Kidman. Keith Urban had lived through fire, silence, and a loneliness that echoed inside glittering arenas. But it was her presence that broke the cycle. Their meeting wasn't just a romantic encounter, it was a spiritual awakening, the beginning of his redemption. While the world watched a glamorous couple fall in love, few knew that behind the scenes, Nicole was fighting for his life. And Keith, broken, ashamed, yet deeply moved, finally reached for the hand that refused to let go. What followed was more than a marriage. It was a rebirth. They met in January 2005 at a Hollywood gala, an event teeming with stars and flashing cameras. But amidst all the sparkle, Keith only remembers one presence: Nicole. For Keith, it wasn't love at first sight. It was something deeper, something magnetic. Nicole Kidman saw past the fame, the music, the image. She saw the wounded man still trying to heal. Keith would later admit that he waited 4 months before calling her, paralyzed by a mixture of awe and self-doubt. Their bond grew in silence and depth, away from the headlines. Just a year later, on June 25, 2006, they were married in a candlelit ceremony in Sydney. The world saw it as a fairy tale. But to Keith, it was a lifeline. That new beginning was not without turbulence. Just 4 months into their marriage, Keith relapsed. The demons he had hidden so well crept back in. The man who had stood on stage before thousands found himself drowning in isolation. In a courageous act of love, Nicole staged an intervention. She gathered close friends, consulted addiction experts, and confronted Keith with unwavering compassion. She made it clear this wasn't about control, it was about survival. He entered the Betty Ford Center in October 2006. But this time something was different. He wasn't just doing it for himself. He was doing it for the woman who refused to give up on him, for the chance to build the life he never believed he could have. In later interviews, Keith described that period as a spiritual reawakening. "I truly began living when I married her," he said. And those words were no exaggeration. Recovery gave him clarity, and clarity gave him purpose, and purpose led to transformation. In 2008, they welcomed their first daughter, Sunday Rose, whose birth Keith called the most humbling moment of his life. In 2010 came Faith Margaret, born via surrogate. Fatherhood grounded him. It was no longer about escaping pain through music or substances. It was about presence, about love, about becoming the man he had once watched his own father fail to be. Nicole, an icon in her own right, stood beside him not just as a wife, but as a co-survivor of his darkest battles. She didn't save him. She stood in the fire with him until he found the strength to walk out. Their love story is not one of perfection, but one of persistence, of showing up when it's hardest, of holding the line when everything inside you wants to let go. Keith often reflects not on the Grammys or chart toppers, but on quiet mornings making breakfast for his girls, on long walks with Nicole through the countryside, on the simplicity of a hand held at the right time. That's where he found his redemption. Not in the noise of applause, but in the silence of being truly seen and loved. Nicole once said in an interview, "I married the man I believed in, not the one everyone else saw." And that belief, unwavering and quiet, carried Keith through storms that nearly destroyed him. They've weathered fame, grief, relapse, and rebirth. But through it all, they chose each other again and again. Today, their home is filled not just with music and memory, but with peace. And perhaps the most powerful music he ever created wasn't an album or a hit single. It was the life he rebuilt with her, note by note, day by day, with honesty, with pain, and with a love that refused to let him fall. Today, Keith Urban stands not just as a survivor of his past, but as a man who has mastered the art of peace and balance. Now in his late 50s, he splits his time between several breathtaking residences across the globe, each reflecting a different chapter of his soul's journey. He shares his life with his wife, Nicole Kidman, and their two daughters, Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret, in a lifestyle that is rich not just in material wealth, but in serenity. Whether nestled in their Nashville mansion surrounded by nature, retreating to their historic farmhouse in Sutton Forest, or enjoying harbor views from their Sydney penthouse, the Urban Kidman family has built a world where privacy, simplicity, and love are paramount. Keith's days are filled with music, mindfulness, and moments of quiet joy. He continues to release music that reflects his maturity and inner clarity, such as his 2024 album, High, a project brimming with introspection and emotional depth. Songs like Straight Line and his duet with Lainey Wilson, Go Home W, show a man who is still innovating, still creating, and still connecting with audiences around the world. He remains active on the music scene, not only performing live, but mentoring younger artists, often appearing at industry events, charity concerts, and televised specials. His commitment to the craft has not waned. If anything, it has deepened. Financially, Keith has turned his artistry into a legacy. His estimated net worth in 2025 sits at $75 million. And together with Nicole Kidman, their combined net worth is estimated to exceed $250 million, making them one of the most influential and financially successful power couples in the entertainment world. A reflection of over 2 decades of consistent success. His album sales have surpassed 20 million worldwide, and his stint as a judge on American Idol earned him $5 million per season. In 2013, he smartly diversified by launching a line of guitars and accessories through the Home Shopping Network, an endeavor that sold over 42,000 units in just 6 months. And yet, his lifestyle remains grounded. Keith is passionate about Italian cuisine, often cooking with his daughters or enjoying family dinners at home. He practices daily workouts in his personal gym, meditates regularly, and finds solace in painting, what he calls meditation through art. He abstains completely from alcohol and any stimulants, honoring his long-standing sobriety with quiet discipline. His spiritual life is rich with gratitude and reflection, often journaling and revisiting handwritten lyrics and mementos from earlier years. The properties he owns are more than real estate. They are sanctuaries. In addition to his Nashville home, he owns a $39 million mansion in New York's Upper East Side, reportedly intended as a gift for Nicole. Their 3-unit combined residence in Milson Point, Sydney, offers panoramic harbor views and a reminder of their shared Australian roots. The iconic couple's Chelsea and Tribeca apartments in New York provide elegant urban retreats, while their 110-acre Sutton Forest estate in rural Australia serves as a place to escape, heal, and recharge. Keith's connection to the land and to simplicity is evident in how he chooses to live. Never ostentatious, always meaningful. Despite their fame, the couple values giving back. In early 2025, Keith's fan community donated over 1,200 stuffed animals to children's hospitals in his honor, continuing a tradition inspired by his own generosity. Keith also supports organizations like the Nashville Food Project and Thistle Farms, a testament to his desire to lift others as he rises. His health, both physical and emotional, has never been better. Clean, clear, and content, he embodies the rare combination of stardom and humility. He no longer runs from his pain, but embraces it as part of his truth, a truth that informs every note he plays, every lyric he pens. The Keith Urban of today is not just a country icon, he is a man at peace. He is a father who tucks in his daughters, a husband who still looks at Nicole with the same wonder he did the day they met, an artist who no longer chases the stage, but lets the music come to him. In a world that prizes noise, Keith Urban has found beauty in silence, and in that stillness, his legacy grows louder than ever. He is not just a country icon, he is a mirror of resilience, a melody of healing, and a quiet revolution against despair. If his story has moved you, touched something deep within, we invite you to honor his journey. Leave a like, subscribe, and let his legacy echo further. Because Keith Urban's story isn't just about music, it's about what it means to truly live, to truly overcome.